And now over to the next company, Senzime, where we will be presented the news about this company from the CEO, Pierre Renaudin. And Senzime develops and markets CE-marked and FDA-approved medical technology systems powered by unique algorithms and disposable sensors. And these sensors assess the patient's muscle function before, during, and after anesthesia. So please give Pierre Renaudin a warm hand.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's really great to be here, and it's great to have an audience again. So I'm going to start with a short introduction about Senzime for those of you who do not know the company, and then I'm going to end with the recent highlights and our Q1 report. But let me start with a key introduction. So Senzime is a Swedish medtech company based in Uppsala. We do, as was just said, we develop, manufacture, and sell a tetragraph system that actually can digitally measure the patient's muscle function before, under, and after surgery, so the doctor knows when it's safe to wake up the patient again. We operate on a really big market. It's worth 15 billion Swedish crowns, and there is a great unmet medical need. Our product has been developed during more than 10 years of research and development, also by the Mayo Clinic or a professor at the Mayo Clinic. And the business model is a razor and blade model, where we have recurrent revenues. We have built a great commercial platform where we now have subsidiaries in the US and in Germany. There are sales organizations. We have a licensing partner with Fukuda Denshi in Japan, and we work with our distributors in our top priority countries very closely. And last but not least, we have a great leadership team that have a great track record in launching globally. But let me start with the unmet medical need. So there are about 160 million surgeries every year on Senzime markets. And I think you probably all know that when you have a surgery, you're being put to sleep. But in almost 50% of all the cases, you also get muscle relaxing agents. And these muscle relaxing drugs, they actually do that it's impossible for you to sort of control control your muscles, the willpower muscles, what you say. So you cannot breathe on your own any longer, and you will get a breathing tube, you'll be intubated. And this is actually Senzime's addressable market. These muscle blocking agents, they lead to a lot of complications. Studies show more than up to 30–40% of the patients get some kind of complications, and almost 1 million every year have what is called critical respiratory event, and these complications can be life-threatening. So this is a big problem. The doctors are aware of the problem. They know that the patient needs to recover 90% of its muscle function before it's safe to sort of wake up the patient again. So why is this still happening? Well, it's still happening because the methods used today, they are suboptimal and not very precise. If you look at the left, you can see that there are still healthcare professionals that do a clinical assessment. A clinical assessment means that you ask the patient if they can move their head or if they can do a hand grip. This is something you can do when you have recovered 40% of your muscle functions. In the middle, it's what is called PNS, is a peripheral nerve stimulator. It's widely used in the US. What you do with this monitor is that you measure or you stimulate the ulnar nerve on your hand, and then you will get, you stimulate 4 times, it's called train of 4, and you will see 4 twitches on your thumb. And then it's up to the doctor to sort of estimate if there is a fade, if the last twitch is weaker than the first one. And I think it's quite understandable that this is very hard, and it's almost like flipping a coin. In the 90s, there were the first objective monitor that arrived on the market, and this was much better, but have some clear weaknesses, and the two major weaknesses is the first one, that it has a tendency to overestimate the recovery. So if you don't do some complicated calibrations, there is still a high risk that you will extubate the patients, take out the breathing tube too early. And secondly, you cannot use this monitor in all surgeries. You cannot use it when you do robotic surgery or laparoscopic surgery, because you need a free-moving thumb, and you cannot do that in this kind of operations. So when this product was launched in the 90s, Professor Søren Bruhl started to work on developing the tetragraph system. So tetragraph system is built with a unique algorithm, and then is using electromyography, so another technique, EMG technology. This is different and make the product much more precise and much more easy to use. You will still stimulate the nerve with 4 twitches, but instead of measuring the movement of the thumb, you will actually measure the first muscle reaction in the hand. So this is really the reason for being very precise, but also, even more importantly, able to use this in any kind of surgery, because even though you will still have a movement, this is not what's being calculated. Tetragraph is approved in Europe, in the US, South Korea, and Japan. The market today is moving towards more objective and, of course, more precise monitors. There are very few players in the gold standard EMG field where we are, and it's a very high barrier to enter the market. There have been a lot of science and a lot of publications. Last year, there were 3 major publications that were published. The first one is a comparative study with our tetragraph system to this type of AMG monitors, which again showed that we were superior. And this study was so well done, so it was actually featured on the first page, or the cover page of Anesthesiology, which is the most prestigious journal in this field. The second one is a cost-effective study that was done in the US, EMG compared to AMG, which also showed clearly that you only need to reduce a few complications and you will break even towards the older technique. And the last one was a highly scientific study, which actually showed not really new science, but managed to show everything in the same study. So that third study showed that when you give neuromuscular blocking agent, you will get critical respiratory events, and if you monitor, you can prevent them. It's not only the science and the new products, the clinical experts are also year after year coming out with more and more expert guidelines, the clinical guidelines, and they're all pushing for objective monitoring. Last year, the Spanish guidelines came out, and also the British guidelines. The British guidelines were some of the most strictest guidelines I've ever seen. They are actually saying, they are stating in the guidelines that you should have an objective monitor in every operating room, and you should use an objective monitor every time you give neuromuscular blocking agent. So this is, of course, very, very strict. And right now, or this year, we are expecting the full European guidelines coming out, and also American guidelines. The US right now only have a consensus statement that came out 4 years ago, but we are being told that currently there are circulating a draft guidelines for the US. If you look at the market and we look at the data based on operating room and number of surgeries taking place with neuromuscular blocking agent on Senzime markets, you can see that if every operating room had a tetragraph, that would be worth 3.6 billion Swedish crowns. But much more interesting, if every surgery using neuromuscular blocking agent was using a TetraSens, that would be worth 12 billion every year. So even if we only took a small piece of this market, it's still a very interesting market. We are today represented in 29 countries. Our focus markets are the US and Germany, where we have subsidiaries and direct sales organization. We are also working very closely with our top distributors, and that is really in our key countries, like the top European countries and South Korea. And then, of course, we work closely with Fukuda Denshi, our licensing partner. In the US, we are also using distributors. This is really to make sure that we can cover a broader geographic area in this very big country. We also have our inventors, Professor Soren Brull. He's still active in the US, and he's still very passionate about driving this change, this paradigm shift forward. We have, just at the beginning of this year, won several really big university clinics in the US. In Germany, we have now 3 salespeople. They all come from the area of anesthesiology. They know the doctors, they know the purchasing organizations, and I think we have sold almost 15 university hospitals, hospitals this year in Germany. So we are making a lot of progress very quickly there too. So with that, I'm moving into the recent highlights. We had a great first quarter. We grew with 64%. We grew with more than 100% in the US and with more than 30% in Europe. We improved our gross margin with more than 20 percentage points. And we announced at the beginning of this year that in the last quarter last year, we had 74 ongoing trials. It was a high activity. We can now say that we have won 27 of these evaluations. We have lost none, and 29 new evaluations have started. So we have a very good hit record. Last year, we also certified our company and all our products to MDR, which is the new standard for medical devices in Europe. We also brought home the production of the monitor to Uppsala, and we also certified the in-house production to MDR without one single deviation. And I think that speaks a lot to the great team we have in Uppsala. I've already talked about the guidelines and the publications last year. What happened more this quarter was that at the end of March, we actually launched in Europe a pediatric sensor for children. You can see it on the little picture at the bottom. It's transparent, very soft, perfect for children. We already have had several orders in Europe. We also submitted the pediatric sensor to FDA in the US, and we expect an approval later this year. If you are looking forward to this year, the coming month, we expect, of course, the approval of the pediatric sensor in the US. We expect more big wins, and we do expect to see American guidelines coming out this year. We have now installed 1,200, shipped 1,200 Tetragraph system, and they are, of course, the ones that are going to drive the sensor business. And you can see that our rolling 12 in sales is continuing to increase. If you look at the regions, you can see that in Europe we have a very nice growth rate over the years, and we haven't even really started in France and Spain yet. They are just sort of getting started, so this is a very good performance. The US, not a very long period yet, but great growth. In Asia, it looks a little bit, doesn't look straightforward, but it's organic growth there. In 2019, we had milestones payment from Fukuda, and they also order quite big orders at the time, so depending when the orders comes in. We talked a little bit about the gross margin. We have increased with 20 percentage points, and we are working a lot with the gross margin. If we continue to be better when sales increases in volume, when the mix of more direct sales is increasing, of course the in-house production of the monitor will show in the gross margin. And we also have a great deal on the production of the sensors, where we will be stepping down when we reach certain accumulative levels. So this will continue to look good. We were announcing earlier this year about the 74 ongoing trials and what this means in terms of potential. So these number of trials have a potential of more than 1,000 systems, and we believe that when they're up and running, each Tetragraph will generate about 50,000 Swedish crowns per year with good gross margin. We are very ambitious. We believe that we will be able to take 10% of the market in due time, and we believe that we will be able to sell for 200 million Swedish crowns in 2023. And that means that we install 5,000 Tetra system. So we have a great vision of reducing anesthesia-related complication. It's still a lot of work. It's very interested, and the doctors are really happy to see the work we are doing, and I hope that there are more of you that are interested in joining us in this journey. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Pia. It seems like you're really steamrolling the competition here, and you're really doing a fantastic job on the market. Are there any major hurdles ahead that the potential investors needs to be aware of in terms of expanding even further?
So I think no, there are no major hurdles. I think the frustration we have is that it's change management. So of course it's you want to drive the change faster and quicker, but I think we are moving at a great pace with the few people we are. I mean, we're still quite small, and it's a big market.
And the American market is going really strong.
Yeah.
How come that there is such a great expansion in the US market, on the US
So I think
market?
I heard it from a previous speaker as well, but of course when you can go direct, it's better. You have more control, you have more committed people, they work only with your product, so that's great. Of course it's also more expensive, so you have to look at that balance between working with direct sales force and also with distributors. So that's what we do in the US. So the direct sales force, they are more efficient. But we're also developing how we work with the distributors, and they are also sort of getting up to speed. But that's the balance.
And how about the pediatrics market versus the adult?
So the pediatric market is really important. There are, of course, percentage-wise, there are less surgeries with this neuromuscular blocking agent. But of course, the kids, there's a great interest for the kids. I was actually at the Pediatric Congress in Tampa in the beginning of April this year. And in the big scientific congress with thousands of people, there were a doctor who was presenting the need for monitoring. And she said that for the pediatrics, we can absolutely not use the AMG, so the older versions, because the thumb movement is nothing we can measure. So up on the big screen, we had Tetragraph and our competitor, another similar competitor, on the screen, and she said, this is the gold standard, and we are expecting and we are trying to make sure that pediatrics are going to be in the US guidelines as well for the adults. So I think it speaks a lot to the importance of this market as well.
Well, they're vulnerable, the little ones, so
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Pia,
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you.